When we think of horror or ghost stories, our minds instinctively drift toward jump scares, ear-piercing shrieks, and frame-by-frame psychological torture. Yet, in the annals of cinema, there exists a masterpiece that completely subverts these tropes. A film where the supernatural isn't here to terrify, but to haunt us with a devastating aesthetic beauty. That masterpiece is Kwaidan, an anthology woven from 4 distinct tales, adapted from ancient folklore. The film navigates the shifting sands of Japanese history, striking a stark contrast between the Heian and Edo periods. Kwaidan doesn't rely on cheap ghouls to shock. It uses these supernatural myths to preserve the very soul of Japanese culture. Beyond the ghosts, it digs into the brutal, agonizing reality of the human condition. Today, let's talk about Kwaidan, the one-of-a-kind horror classic from the land of the rising sun. Set during the Heian era, a time when samurai and warlords began their ascent, the story The Black Hair stands as a haunting metaphor for the misery of poverty. Heian, literally the era of peace, is a cruel irony. The elite, draped in 12-layered silk robes, spend their days reciting poetry and moon-gazing. Yet, they represent only 1% of the population, just beyond the gates of Kyoto. And even in the outskirts of the capital, life is a living hell. Punishing taxes meant to sustain the idle aristocracy, coupled with famine, plague, and natural disasters, condemn thousands to a slow starvation. Amid this, a nameless samurai decides to abandon his home to serve a provincial lord, ignoring the desperate, pleading cries of his wife. He turns his back on his impoverished life, chasing a new beginning. But can he truly find happiness by marrying into noble blood? Of course not. A marriage built on convenience is destined to rot. His life with his second wife is a cold reality. Raised in opulence, this woman possesses skin as pale as snow, traditional blackened teeth, and an army of servants at her beck and call. She is temperamental, spoiled, and relentless. Despite the luxury, the samurai remains tormented by his past. He is haunted by memories of his first wife, a woman of simple, rustic grace who loved him with a devotion he didn't deserve. That hollow ache in his chest pulls him back to where he belongs, igniting a desperate human craving for a love that is pure. He struggles to resist, but how can one survive without the sun? Draped in a kimono of royal purple, a color as expensive as it is difficult to procure, the second wife slips quietly into his study, finding her husband drifting in and out of sleep over his books. She gently leans into his arms, but the man she loves shoves her away with a cold, jagged edge. His actions tear away the mask, forcing the poor woman to confront the brutal truth. She strikes him, a sharp slap that exposes his spinelessness and the bottomless ingratitude of a man climbing the social ladder on her family's dime. Nursing her resentment, she turns and walks out. Her raven black hair and purple robes bleed into the shadows, swallowed by the gloom. That once luxurious shade of purple suddenly turns funereal, as if the suffocating shame she endures is now staining the very air of the room. That very same night, the man who failed to understand the violet, a color meant to symbolize devotion, crosses the line once more, slinking back to find his first wife. The city is silent as a graveyard. Beneath the rotting wood of a dilapidated shack, choked by thickets of weeds and overgrown pampas grass, he returns, stepping into the dark abandoned shell of a house, desperate to reclaim a ghost. And there she is, the raven black hair, the slight frame hunched over the loom, exactly as he remembers. Contrary to everything he expected, his faithful wife sits silently in the shadows, offering no malice, no bitter recrimination for his betrayal. Her tenderness breaks him. He collapses into her arms, weeping with a remorse that feels hollow, and swears an oath to stay with her until the end of time. In the flickering light, they lose themselves in a night of desperate passion. But when morning breaks, the samurai wakes to a nightmare. He is locked in the embrace of a skeletal corpse, draped in a shroud of white hair. He bolts in terror, but the hair is faster, a living, pulsing entity that descends upon him, draining the very essence of his life. As the wife's white tresses bleed back into a deep, glossy black, he begins to wither. Skin wrinkles, hair turns to snow, and his vitality vanishes into the void. The first chapter of the film dissolves into the darkness. When stacked against the original folklore, the film's deviation is sharp and calculated. In the source material, the husband flees the moment he sees the dry bones. He only learns the truth from a neighbor that the house has been vacant for years, and the woman had long since withered away from loneliness and disease. In that version, the man survives, the ending serving as a moral cautionary tale against infidelity. But the film chooses a bleaker path, teasing the inevitability of the husband's death and the supernatural malice of the hair itself. More importantly, it grants a profound empathy to all three characters. None of them are given names, suggesting they are mere archetypes of an ancient Japanese social order. Everyone is a victim of the times. Poverty pushes men toward moral bankruptcy, leading them to trample on the sanctity of love. The situation is so wretched that when the final, gruesome hallucination unfolds, we are left to wonder, is the horror real? Or is it merely the projection of a guilt-ridden mind? Is he simply a man who has lost his grip on reality, driven into madness by the realization that his wife died long ago in that crumbling house, abandoned and forgotten? Digging deeper into the female characters, the film peels back the layers of agony and selfishness buried in the human heart. The first wife, even in her spectral state, remains anchored in compassion when she hears his apologies, even warns him that their happiness is a fleeting mirage. It seems she never intends to destroy him until he begs to be with her forever. Only then does the spectral hair make its choice, deciding to drag the man into an eternal union, a final selfish act of possession. As for the second wife, the official's daughter, the film offers a more humanistic lens. In the original tales, she is painted as a cruel, cold-hearted woman, but here she is merely another casualty of the era, forced into a marriage with a man whose background, tastes, and values are worlds apart from her own. She is a woman denied love, a soul cast aside in a world that never wanted her. Ultimately, one has to wonder, is this ghost story merely poetic justice for a man's treachery and infidelity, or is it a dirge for souls shredded by the teeth of a brutal, chaotic age? Perhaps the answer lies in the shadows of our own interpretations. Leaving the high-end capital behind, the second chapter plunges us into the frozen, desolate wilderness of midwinter, caught in a whiteout. An old woodcutter and his young apprentice huddle for cover in a decaying mountain shack in that suffocating, ice-choked space. Yuki-onna, the snow woman, materializes. With a single, freezing breath, she snuffs out the old man Masaku, but spares the young Minokichi on one condition. He must never breathe a word of this night to a living soul. Death will find him in an instant. Folklore is rife with theories about the snow woman's origin. Some claim she is a succubus, a fox-like spirit that uses beauty as bait to lure men to their doom. A more grounded view suggests she is a hallucination born from the delirium of hypothermia, a beautiful phantom feeding on the warmth of the dying. Others believe she is the restless ghost of a woman who perished in the snow, still nursing the desperate, tragic longing to live and love like a normal human. This empathy manifests in the concept of yuki-akari, the light of the snow. In Lafcadio Hearn's original prose, he describes the luminescence of the snow reflecting on the faces of the two men. Director Kobayashi translates this into a masterclass of lighting, washing their faces in a soft golden glow. Snowlight is inherently sterile, but here, paired with that warm amber hue, it stands in haunting contrast to the icy blue of death. It forces the audience to rethink the myth. What if, beneath that lethal frozen exterior, there beats a soul longing for the warmth of the living? As time wears on, Minokichi falls for a stunning young woman named Oyuki. Compared to the literary source, the film fleshes out their domestic bliss with painstaking detail, turning their small family life into a breathing thing. The look in Oyuki's eyes when she gazes at Minokichi is thick with love, and he returns that warmth with a gentleness that cuts through the cold. There is more than just martial duty between them. There is the raw, burning passion of the mortal realm. The sight of them frolicking on the hillside and making love in the amber glow of twilight is hauntingly, achingly human. When Minokichi presses his hand against Yuki's chest, he is blindsided by the steady, rhythmic thrum of a heartbeat. This cold, predatory snow woman is alive. The favorite moment comes when Minokichi diligently braids a pair of straw sandals for his wife to wear for the new year. Yuki hesitates. The red is too vibrant, too youthful for a married woman, but Minokichi strokes her hair and whispers, "You are still young. That color belongs to you. That flash of crimson is the pulse of eternal life, a symbol of love and Yuki's surreal, otherworldly beauty. More than that, It's a beacon of the warmth hidden deep within that frozen heart, everyone dismissed as a vessel for nothing but hatred and misery. But happiness is a fragile thing, and it shatters on a winter night when Minokichi, plagued by memory, spills the forbidden secret of that blizzard years ago. Yuki doesn't immediately lunge for his throat. She sits in the silence, listening, but as he describes her true form, eyes beautiful and terrifying, a frostbitten creature hungry for the warmth of blood, she realizes the razor-sharp truth. The man she loves will never truly love her. To Minokichi, the Snow Woman is nothing more than a lethal, twisted monster. Yuki's eyes welled up with tears. A promise, a sacred vow, lies broken in the dirt. The life she fought so hard to build ends right there. The moment Yuki rises to deliver her verdict, the film shifts into a masterstroke of ukiyo-e aesthetic, manifesting a giant unblinking eye in the heavens. It represents the cold, silent gaze of the divine and the unforgiving nature of the cosmos watching over Minokichi. In the shadow of the samurai spirit, a broken vow is a death sentence to one's honor. A man who breaks his word is a man who ceases to exist. Those eyes are the judge and jury of his betrayal. If you look closely, the color grading screams with contrast. As Yuki condemns him, the room is swallowed by a clinical, ghostly blue, the color of her frigid, spectral world. Yet on the other side of the room, where the children sleep, a warm amber light lingers. The final embers of Yuki's love for the family she's losing. It is a gut-wrenching duality, even in the blizzard-force rage of her betrayal. Her heart is still drowning in love. That love is underscored by the straw sandals buried in the snow. As Yuki vanishes into the night, leaving Minokichi to collapse in a heap of regret, camera lingers over the gift he made for her. Snowflakes drift down like shroud dust, burying Minokichi's last offering. And then, the sandals are gone. She leaves him alive for the sake of the children. But the disappearance of those sandals tells the truth. She takes the love with her. Deep within that heart of ice, there are mortal urges and an endless, hollow ache for the home that once held nothing but laughter. Unlike the intimate, hushed dread of the previous tales, Hoichi the Earless unfolds as a sweeping, tragic epic. It opens with a dirge for the war between the Genji Minamoto and Heikataira clans. The coastal waters of Dan-no-ura, the site of their 1185 naval slaughter, have been cursed for 7 centuries, a graveyard that never sleeps. History remembers it as the most brutal confrontation in the age, where Minamoto crushed Heike into oblivion. Over 3,000 ships went down, turning the tides into a crimson nightmare. The film captures this carnage with a visceral intensity that the original text could only dream of. The tragedy is etched into every frame. Fierce warrior Noritsune, knowing the end has come, fights with the fury of a cornered beast until he drags 2 enemies to the depths with him. Lady Ni, clutching the child, Emperor Antoku, plunges into the abyss to preserve their royal dignity, with loyal retainers following them into the salt-choked dark. These are the restless, unforgiving spirits of the Heike, trapped for 700 years in the crushing abyss, nursing a hunger to hear the Biwa lament their own annihilation. Cut to the present, at the Amidaji Temple, we meet Hoichi, a blind young monk whose Biwa playing and haunting voice are the stuff of local legend. A samurai summons him, demanding he perform for a high lord. The blind monk, oblivious to the scent of death, wanders straight into the underworld. The chilling discovery of a centuries-old corpse in a fisherman's net, its fingers still locked around a biwa, serves as a gruesome omen. It's clear, this isn't the first time the restless dead have risen. They crave the music so intensely, they'll kill to possess it. Night after night, Hoichi follows the samurai, unaware that every pluck of his strings is draining the lifeblood from his veins. The nightmare is finally exposed when his fellow monks track him. They expect to find him performing in a lavish palace. Instead, they find him in the middle of a desolate, windswept graveyard, surrounded by crumbling gravestones. Asian lore whispers that those who die young, those taken by betrayal, carry a grudge that transcends the grave. Amidst this legion of tormented spirits, Hoichi plays on his melody, a bone-chilling bridge to the past. He chooses the finale the Emperor loves most, the tragic end of Dan-no-ura. Here, the film becomes a visual masterpiece. The graveyard bleeds into a phantom stage. The ghosts of old materialize, vibrant and terrifying in the hellish glow of firelight. As Hoichi sings, they are possessed by the agony of their defeat, their tears of blood spilling as they relive their final humiliating breaths. The color red returns, but it isn't the vibrant life force of the Snow Woman. It is the raw, stagnant iron of ancient bloodshed, the very color that stained these straits centuries ago. In that fleeting moment, Hoichi's voice and strings shatter the thin veil between the living and the dead, blurring time and space until even the most lonely, withered souls are brought to their knees. Realizing that Hoichi is being drained of his very life force, the head priest decides to step in, hiding the monk from the spectral predators. He and his acolytes frantically brush the holy characters of the Heart Sutra over every inch of Hoichi's skin, but in the frantic haze, they make a fatal slip, forgetting his ears. That night, the Phantom Samurai returns. In the pitch black, he can't see Hoichi's body, shielded by the holy text, but those two naked ears hover like ghosts in the dark. Desperate for a trophy to appease his lord, the spirit cruelly tears them away. Hoichi is agony personified, but he bites back his scream, choking down the pain to survive. The question that lingers is, why are these restless souls so hell-bent on draining him, only to leave him maimed? Is the epic tragedy of his song a humiliation they can't forgive? A performance punishable by death, or buried deep in their spectral psyches? Does the Heike clan admire his genius so much that they want him as a permanent fixture of their underworld court? In the original text, the tale ends on a clean note. Hoichi heals, shakes off the haunting, and ascends to fame and fortune, but the film takes a darker, more haunting detour. In the aftermath, a mysterious lord hears of Hoichi the Earless and sends a carriage to the temple, demanding a performance. Is this Lord Flesh and Blood, or is he something dead? Is Hoichi safe, or is the underworld circling back to claim him? Ignoring the warnings of his terrified brothers, Hoichi takes the stage, playing, but there is no fear in his strings, only the raw Buddhist compassion of a man trying to soothe a 700-year-old grudge. This transformation marks the true pinnacle of his art. In Eastern lore, a physical flaw is often the price paid for a deeper, supernatural sight. Having stared into the abyss, Hoichi finally understands the broken spirits of Dan-no-ura. The film fades to black on a chilling open-ended note. After the performance for the Lord's retinue, Hoichi is gone. The camera lingers on the silent, empty temple. Is he alive, or is he dead? Did the spirits drag him into the void? Or has the compassion in his music finally granted those 700-year-old ghosts their peace? Did he transcend the physical, fusing yin and yang to step into another dimension? We never get a straight answer, but in the end, it doesn't matter. The accumulated rage of 7 centuries melts away in the face of the art Hoichi leaves behind. If the first 3 chapters of Kwaidan drag us through the gutters of poverty, the biting chill of nature, and the blood-soaked ruins of war, the final act drops us into a world that feels eerily, deceptively calm. The setting is 1684, the 4th year of the Tenna era. Japan is draped in a long, suffocating peace, a reality the samurai despise. For to them, a blade that doesn't taste blood is a useless relic. Director Masaki Kobayashi opens this chapter with a meta-narrative twist. We aren't thrown into the action, we are lured in by a writer, sitting silently with a half-finished manuscript. In the world of art, the ink on the page is a mirror for the author's own fractured mind. That unfinished story becomes our lens, a psychological puzzle for the final act. It follows Sekinai, a low-ranking samurai. One day, reaching for a cup of tea to quench his thirst, he finds a man's face staring back at him from the liquid. So he dumps the tea, pours a new cup, but the face is still there, mocking him. In a momentary snap of sanity, Sekinai downs the tea, swallowing the intruder's soul whole. That night, and for the days to follow, Shikibu and his 3 lethal henchmen spill out into the real world. They haunt Sekinai, goading him, driving the samurai to slash his sword wildly at the empty air, carving at ghosts only he can see. If you look at it through a strictly supernatural lens, you could say Sekinai is simply possessed, but drop him into the harsh light of history and modern psychology, and a far more terrifying, grounded theory emerges. Is Sekinai suffering from schizophrenia, spiraling into a world where hallucinations are indistinguishable from reality? That kind of belief is a trap. Once it takes root, It feeds on the mind until reason dies and madness takes the throne. The roots of this psychosis are buried deep in chronic trauma. The Edo period is a time of peace, but the samurai class just spent centuries marinating in the blood-soaked slaughter of the Warring States period. These horror show memories are classic signs of PTSD, manifesting as ghosts that aren't there. We realize then that war isn't the ultimate evil, at least during the chaos of the warring years. A samurai had a purpose, a place for his blade. In peacetime, they're just obsolete relics, stripped of meaning. It isn't just the starvation or the grind of the black hair that pushes a man to the edge. It's the crushing weight of boredom and existential dread that drags them into the abyss. Why am I here? Why was I born? Am I just a waste of space? These toxic questions fester in Sekinai's mind, triggering a psychological collapse where his hallucinations finally boil over. That phantom isn't just an old enemy. It could be any nameless face he passed on the street, twisted by a fracturing brain into a villain, convenient excuse to draw his steel and feel like a warrior again. By dissecting this internal rot, ancient Japanese art and literature prove they were light years ahead, unafraid to skin the human psyche and expose the secrets hiding underneath. Suddenly, Sekinai's story cuts to black, and we snap back to the writer, whose publisher has arrived to collect his manuscript. But the house is dead silent. Nobody has seen the writer emerge for ages. The rooms are hollow, echoing with a terrifying stillness. When the publisher catches a glimpse of a large water jar sitting in the middle of the room, he freezes, terror-stricken, and flees. The camera drifts forward, peering into the stagnant water, and there, pale, crazed, and trapped at the bottom, his face is a mirror of Sekinai's, exhausted, worn down to the bone by the same madness. It's a gut punch that obliterates the line between reality and the page. Is the grotesque story he wrote a symptom of his own mind eating itself alive? Was he, too, crushed by the stifling, monotonous cage of life until he finally cracked and drowned himself in that jar? Or is he just another victim? A man who stared into the void of his own creation only to be swallowed whole. There are no clean answers here. Kwaidan closes in a suffocating silence, leaving us staring at the empty teacup shattered on the floor. You have to wonder, is there someone else in that tea staring back at us? Here is a fascinating truth. This quintessential collection of Japanese ghost stories was curated and transcribed by none other than Lafcadio Hearn, a Western scholar. It is precisely that cross-cultural prism, fused with director Masaki Kobayashi's masterful visual genius, that transforms Kwaidan into a living, breathing museum of the macabre. The film doesn't just chronicle turbulent eras of history. It dissects the universal philosophies and anxieties that haunt the human soul by absorbing the essence of No and Kabuki theater. Combined with the stark, graphic intensity of Yuki-onna woodblock prints, the film's landscape is staged like a claustrophobic stage play, locking its characters in their own tragic gravity. This stylistic choice carves out a silent, crushing space, echoing the philosophies of Mono no Aware and Wabi-sabi, the belief that true beauty is found in imperfection, and that everything in existence carries a hidden, melancholic weight. By gutting the dialogue to its bare essentials, the director forces the audience to fixate on every subtle shift in expression and every inch of the frame, peeling back layers of meaning that shift depending on who is watching. It is no stretch to say Kwaidan is a masterpiece born from an absolute, unfiltered love for Japanese culture. Within that theatrical void, Kwaidan unfolds like 1,000 shifting woodblock prints, where color itself becomes the narrator. Every shade carries a deliberate, razor-sharp intent, from the mournful, power-drunk purple in the black hair to the brutal tug-of-war between the icy blue of the netherworld and the warm, amber glow of family life in the Snow Woman. Above all, red acts as the crimson thread binding the film together. It mutates, shifting from the vibrant pulse of youth and vitality in the Snow Woman into a blood-soaked ribbon of historical carnage at the Straits of Dan-no-ura, finally settling into the deep, dark crimson of a teacup that swallows human reason whole. Color, composition, and light conspire to dictate the film's psychological pulse. Released in 1964 alongside Kaneto Shindo's visceral horror masterpiece, Onibaba, Kwaidan carves out a territory entirely its own. If Onibaba terrifies with its raw, primal savagery, Kwaidan haunts with a grace that cuts deeper. It thrives on explosive, magnificent visual set pieces the hypnotic pull of a journey through ancient memory, and the bone-deep chill that comes from a cold-blooded psychological autopsy. The film proves one undeniable thing: the most terrifying ghosts aren't always birthed in the shadows. Sometimes, they come in vibrant, blinding color, lurking just beneath the veneer of exquisite beauty and the deepest, darkest secrets we keep hidden from ourselves.